Welcome to the Fish House Nation podcast, and if you're watching this on YouTube, do not adjust your screens. We are wearing matching shirts. But today we are talking some rattle reels, and it's midsummer, but we can't help but think about ice fishing all the time, and today we're going to be talking rattle reels. And if you own a fish house, a rattle reel is something that no doubt that you love and you're familiar with, but if you're new to the game or you just want to learn more about rattle reels, hopefully this will be the show for you. Al, what's happening in your world these days?
Not a whole lot, buddy. Just trying to make it through the summer to get back out on the ice.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've been fishing with boats and big long rods, but we're looking forward to getting out there on the old quad or in the truck or whatever and driving around in the hard ice and their hard water. And today we're gonna be talking rattle reels. And rattle reels, I want to show you. This is the catch cover rattle reel, and this is obviously our favorite. Maybe we're a little biased, but this is our favorite. And basically, what a rattle reel is, if you're new to it, is you mount it on the wall. The catch cover one can also be mounted on the ceiling. It can be mounted under tabletops. It can actually even be mounted on the catch cover safety cover. So there's a lot of different mounting options for it to get it where you want to put it. But you can get this set up. You drop your line down with your bait, and basically you can leave it. It's your dead stick. It's your way to get a line down without handling a rod. And the reason why they rattle when you've got a fish on is if you're sleeping, you can still be fishing. And that's kind of the big thing. And that's obviously, if you got a fish house, that's probably why you bought it. So you're always fishing.
Exactly.
So it allows you, in a lot of states, you can use 2 lines or maybe even 3 lines per angler. And if you're jigging with one rod, you can set that dead stick out with the rattle reel. And if you get a fish on and it starts pulling that line, it's going to start rattling. If you're taking a nap or you're sleeping at night, you could be fishing 24 hours a day. That's good to have.
Even if you're just cooking dinner, Chris.
Even if you're just cooking dinner. And hey, the other thing is there's times where we're out here in the fish house, we're doing some fishing, and it's time to get out a deck of cards and play cards or something. And just, you can't be sitting there jigging all day long, can you?
Well, you could, but you want to enjoy some of the other time out in the shack. So
yeah,
it's a great option just to take a break if you want to maybe even just, if you got the kids with and you're just going to watch a movie or play some games with the kids. It's a great option to keep your line in the water, so that way you're always fishing.
You're always fishing, and that's, a lot of guys buy the fish house to be able to essentially go ice camping. And if you're ice camping and you want to spend time playing cards or playing a game or watching a movie, but you'd like to have some lines down, that's the nice thing about the rattle reel. And for those of you who like to take those trips up to Mille Lacs, I think a lot of people know kind of the story up there. And if you just set dead sticks down, a lot of times they're not real productive. But when you're jigging, a lot of times they don't hit that jig rod. But if you use them both, what we find at least is that the jigging rod brings them in, but they often hit the dead stick. So it gives you that second line, that second opportunity, and a little bit different look than what you would have on your jigging rod.
Exactly. Yep.
So the thing with the rattle reel and this one here, what we like about it is that it's very adjustable. It's got the rattlesnake reel arm on it, and this is something that we have on a lot of our accessories, but it allows you to get this rattlesnake reel over the hole no matter how you mount it. If you mount it off the ceiling, if you mount it on the wall, you can move it and get it set up exactly how you want it. Now, as far as the setup itself and the reel itself, a lot of guys are using fly line because they'll use fly line on their tip-ups. This one here is actually set up with the old school Dacron on it, but you're going to run that Dacron, and then this one's got a swivel on it. You can put your leader on there, and depending on what you're using. Now, we've used rattle reels on panfish lakes, and a lot of times we'll set them down for perch overnight, and nice perch. And with something like that, I would use a mono leader and then put my jig on there. But if you're going to go out and you're going to set these up for pike or lake trout or walleye, what would you use?
I usually use fluorocarbon for just about everything, just for the visibility purposes. A little bit stronger, usually about like a depending on the species, you start looking at um, your walleyes. You're probably looking 4 to 8 pound test. Pike and lake trout, you can obviously go up from there based on the caliber of fish that you're fishing. You know, if you're fishing one of those northern lakes with the giants in it, you just got to be prepared for that and just know what you're targeting and the possibilities of what you could possibly catch, so you're not snapping off and losing hooks and leaving hooks in fish's mouth.
Yeah, so that fly line is actually really nice. This Dacron tends to dig into your hands sometimes when you're pulling it up, and then the other thing is it tends to knot up, I think, when you're pulling it up.
Yeah, the fly line definitely stays a lot more tangle free.
Mm-hmm. It's tangle free. On my tip ups, I've found that the fly line has a lot more memory to it. This Dacron, when you drop it down on your tip ups, it's going to lay more straight. At least on my tip ups, it feels like the fly line keeps that curl in it quite a bit when I drop it down. So I actually like the Dacron on the tip ups, but on the rattlesnake reel, you've got this big wide reel, and the memory isn't quite as bad. But what the fish are going to be seeing, and what I tend to do on these and on my tip ups, is I'll run 8, 9, 10 feet of that fluorocarbon. Yep. So just so that fly line is it's not in the sight range of the fish. When you're running these Al for walleye, let's say you're up on Mille Lacs fishing walleyes, what are kind of some of your favorite dead stick lures? What are you going to be using? What's that setup look like at the end?
Mainly when I'm fishing tip-ups or rattle reels, I almost always have a spoon on just tipped with a minnow. Again, depending on the species or what you're targeting, walleyes, I tend to gravitate towards like your forage minnow with a treble hook on the bottom. Back hook, either shiner or fathead, again, depending on the body of water you're on. That's my favorite way. Otherwise, a very underutilized tactic is a plain hook. A lot of people overlook that one because it's so basic, but that's another great option. I try to use a lot of glows, a lot of bright colors, because you're generally using your rattle reels at nighttime. During the daytime, they will still tend to bite on those glow colors anyway, so I almost always have glow or bright tied on there.
All right. And another thing with the rattle reel, there's a lot of different setups, a lot of different rattle reels out there. This one is set up basically one turn is 1 foot down. So when you're setting your lines, you can drop that one turn, and you know how deep you're running. But the other thing, typically, what I'll do is just drop the deucer in the hole and get that depth that I want. How far off the bottom do you typically drop your baits down?
Again, it's a little bit different for every species. Like if I'm targeting pike, I like to be higher up in the water column, like anywhere from halfway to the bottom of the top third. Mm-hmm. Is where I like to fish for pike. Walleyes, depending on how many reels you got too, because you like to try and separate them until you find that kind of sweet spot where they're really firing up. Anywhere from a foot to 5 feet off the bottom, and then again, it just depends on how many people I got with me, how many rattle reels. If it's just you and me for the weekend and we're fishing with Mille Lacs, we could have 2 lines out. We'll each put one out. I'll put one at 1, I'll put one at 3, you put one at 4, you put one at 6, and we start getting bites on the one that's at 4 feet. Then we start adjusting the other ones accordingly. That's really the easiest way to do it, because then you're covering as many different parts of the water column as possible, and you're seeing where those fish are tending to travel, and that's assuming you're not using that's assuming you're using mainly just the rattle reels. You're not using your electronics. Usually by the time you get the rattle reels out, it's because you're either making dinner or you're getting ready for bed, so you kind of have an idea where those fish have been, where you've been catching those fish while you're sitting there jigging, watching your electronics, whether it's the underwater camera or your flasher. So you kind of have that strike zone figured out where you want your bait to start.
And a lot of it is similar strategy what you'd have as far as tip-ups go. And I think a lot of people, especially if you haven't fished with underwater cameras, Don't realize you talked about the northern pike being at the top end of that water column. It's amazing how many times you drop your camera down and you'll see those pike just cruising, basically, almost 3-4 feet under the ice, and that's about it.
Yep.
And that's kind of where they live and do their business. And you'll find them in a lot of your favorite panfish holes because I think they're looking for fish that haven't been, that have been mishandled or hooked too deeply and get dropped down into the water and perish, and they kind of clean up that mess.
Yep.
So that would be the place to go with them. But when you're talking about walleyes, I think a lot of it also really depends on water clarity. And I think if you've got clearer water, I think higher is better, just because they can see it from further away, and they'll think nothing of coming up to get what they want when they want it. So a lot of it really is going to depend on clarity. And so many of the lakes that we fish these days have had zebra mussels on them and are pretty clear. The other thing I want to bring up is you talked about 2 lines on Mille Lacs.
It is
Check your regulations, because it was 2 the last time I've been there, but who knows? On the Lacs, they change your regulations all the time. So if you're listening to this in the future, check your regulations before you go out there, because it may be different at the time that you head out onto the lake. The other thing that some guys like to have a bobber on there, because then their depth is set and it doesn't move. The minnows tend to kind of do the same thing as far as their action. This particular one right now is set up with a little round bobber on it, and it's pretty simple. If you look down in the hole and that bobber is underwater, there's a good chance you got a fish, and that's basically just to hold the minnow in place at the depth that they want it. But the stick bobbers are becoming super popular, and there's a lot of cool ones on it. We did a podcast last year with one of those fish house bobbers, and the stick actually comes up over the top of the hole, so you can really see that. And the minnow tends to it does this, and then when you get a fish, it makes a completely different action. So a bobber is another good idea, just to make sure you've got that depth set where you want it, and the minnow can't take off in too many places. You like to have. Let's talk about minnows. How do you like your minnow on your dead stick?
I want to go back to the bobber real quick. Just a real quick point. Another nice thing of the bobber is it's a lot quicker to reset your bait after you catch a fish. Sure. So that's really the main reason I put the bobbers on mine. I use the real small tip up bobbers, and all I do is that it's not really for concern of the minnow. For me, I just like to be able to, after I catch a fish, I drop it back down with the bobber and I'm done. I don't have to grab my flasher from the other corner of the shack and reset it. You know that, or if you get like a short strike and he bites it and he pulls off line and then spits it, you know right how to pull it back up and you're ready to go. Just a little quicker setup there. But back to the minnows. It really depends, just like on everything else, it depends on how the bite is, how the fish are reacting, how aggressive they are. If you're in a key bite period or bite window and they're seeming to be really aggressive, then you want that more lively minnow that's out there making, as much flash and movement in the water so that those fish can really pick it up from the longer distances, and then as they get close they can zoom in on it. But if you're starting into a slower period of the day, midday, where they're going to be a little bit more finicky, then I tend to downsize my minnow, go a little bit smaller. At that point, it doesn't seem to matter quite as much if your minnow's not quite as lively, just because when they're not real active, they're lethargic and they want that easy meal, as opposed to that real aggressive look where you're really more or less drawing out the fish that are actively feeding.
Yeah, and I think we were talking about the pike thing too. It seems to me that they don't seem to care as much whether it's dead or alive. How about hot dogs? You ever put a hot dog on one?
I have not personally done the hot dog trick. I got a couple buddies that I've seen it done, and they've had success, but I have not tried it.
I've never tried it either, but one of these days I just got to take a shot and give it a try, because I think it'd be a lot of fun to say you caught this big pike on a hot dog, and they they're the scavengers of the ice fishing world, so kind of a fun shot there with them. dead stick, tip up, same deal. When you have that thing running, the spool's going, do you let them eat? Do you pull it right away? How much pull are we pulling when we're setting the hook?
Again, it's for me a little more species specific. If I'm targeting walleyes particularly, I tend to let them eat it a lot longer, because usually they'll grab that minnow and take it off and then stop, spin it around, suck it down, and that's when you can get the real good hook sets. If you pull them too early, you tend to rip the minnow in half and have a lot of short strikes. And you can run into that with pike and some of the other species, but it's not as prevalent that I have found. With the pike, I mean, you're just looking to pull pressure. What I do when I get a fish on the rattle reel is I let them run. I pull out, give them a little bit of slack before I start feeling for that bite, and then you just give it a quick little jerk. I mean, we're talking, 6-inch hand movement. I mean, you don't have to do a huge hook set. You just need to get it firm enough where you're getting it into there, and you also got to consider the line that you're using. If you're using like a mono that has a lot of stretch, you might need to set it a little bit harder, but that quick jerk just to penetrate that skin, a nice solid hook set works wonders. It's just one of those things that, just like anything else, you're going to kind of do it a few times and expect to miss a few fish, but once you get her dialed in and figured out, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, the other thing, we've been talking pike, we've been talking walleye, and obviously, you can certainly pick up things like bass and stuff on this as well, and a lot of the same baits, same lures. But a few years ago, I was out and we were just on top of this perch hot spot, and we had the lines down for perch, and certainly a rattle reel can be of service there too. Again, just a little bit lighter tackle, everything on it a little bit lighter, but don't be afraid to use them if you're in your favorite panfish spot, just to get yourself another line in the water. And yeah, that line may not be as hot as the jigging line that you're running, but gets you another line down, helps you catch a few more fish. Anything else on rattle reels that we didn't talk about, Al, that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, some of those biggest bluegills, I mean, come in the middle of the night when guys are sleeping on rattle reels. I mean, they're definitely an overlooked tactic, and just get out there, get fishing.
So get yourself some catch cover rattle reels. It's the rattlesnake reel. You can find it at catchcover.com. You can find it in a lot of your favorite retailers. Get some of those if you've just picked up a fish house, or if you've been fishing the same fish house for a long time and you're looking to get into the rattle reels. Check these things out. We love them, and they work great and get you more lines in the water. Keeps you fishing all the time when you're out on the lake. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching, and we will talk to you next time.
Have a good one, guys.